The 26th, the first order of business is a motion, who's present? Go ahead.
Bernie Rosen, Chairman.
Here.
Mark Kaplan is absent today. Michael Spitzer is en route. Bud Larson.
Present.
Representing Controller Scott Stringer, Michelle Mark Levine.
Present.
Representing Public Advocate Letitia James, Umair Khan.
Present.
Representing Mayor Bill de Blasio, Nicole Fleming.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. The next order of business is to accept the draft minutes of the meeting held on March 22nd,
I'll make a motion to accept.
subject to some maybe grammatical changes. We'll assume that they're accepted. Bud, could I have a motion?
Yes, motion to accept.
Okay. Second? Joe? Second? Okay. All right, so we'll
Second.
go right into the business at hand. The first item I have is the teacher's retirement system. Who was that?
Yeah, hi. Ms. Mitchell, Mitchell Fruchter, Assistant Chief Accountant of Teachers Retirement
You
System.
got to talk into the mic.
Hopefully, this is working.
It's working, just pull it forward.
Okay.
Pull the base forward.
But she'll help you.
Okay. Is it testing?
Yeah.
It's working.
Okay. Good.
Anyway, so again, Mitchell Fruchter, Assistant Chief Accountant, Teachers Retirement System. It's good to be back. Representing, we're going over the Teachers Retirement System financials. So just as a general introduction, I think financials are as opposed to in years past. So this is the third year where the report combines the QPP, the pension side, with the TDA, our 403B, tax deferred annuity program. It's also the third year that the financials included actuarial note disclosures for GASB 67, 68, and the second year that the financials included the investment note disclosure required under GASB 72, as well as it's the first year with our new auditor, as Mark Spanik. So in general, these GASB 67, 68, GASB 72 are one of the larger types of changes in government accounting in the past decade. So it grew our financial statements quite a bit since before. In terms of the teachers in that position, so the QPP, the pension plan as of 6/30/16 was $43.6 billion, down from $44.2 billion in 6/30/15. The TDA net position as 6/30/16 was $28.4 billion, up from $27.3 billion of 6/30/15. Combined QPP and TDA, 72.1 billion. And I think that's the reason why I've been going first. Since we've combined, if you take the TDA and the QPP together, we have more assets than, let's say, NYSERS that has a larger QPP but does not have the deferred comp. In terms of, the market, so you could tell that the QPP slightly went down. The Russell 3000 was largely flat, returning 2.1% for fiscal year 16. The international investments, which we have considerable holdings there too, were down 3.3% for last year. The pension fund as a whole, just the pension fund returned 1.66%. 1.66% is obviously less than an expected return of 7%. If you look in our CAFRA, it mentions that the 10-year return like 5.99%. So that's still less than 7%. I guess, similarly, the funding status as of 6/30/14 was like 56%. In terms of right now, we're in March, we already have March, 2017, so our net assets are currently around 80 billion. So We expect this year, if it just holds steady, to be a good year for us. In terms of some other things that are in the MD&A, we include in the beginning on page 4 just a breakdown of activity by employer, and on page 13 includes a cash flow of the QPP and TDA and percent holdings of QPP and TDA. But that's a general sense of look for 2016. I could mention we did have a rebalancing after the year, a large amount, which is mentioned. It's not really, it's mentioned in page 27 in the note 2 that we had a rebalancing between the fixed funds invested by the controller and the variable funds, which are invested, internally. Teachers oversees that. Balancing is really necessitated by administrative code, which looked forward and saw that the earlier tiers, really even before we had a 403B program, had extra money invested into their pension fund, where they were able to opt into basically mutual funds. So since it was an earlier plan and mortality tables from when they retired might have been a little outdated, rebalance and make sure that funding would not, funds will be there until these retire, as long as we have these retirees. So that occurred in November of 2016. I guess it was a rebalancing of over 3.8 billion. So was a lot of money that was moved. But that's, I guess, a summary of where we are right now.
I remember at one time, I'm sorry. We kept the TDA program.
Yeah, actually, that's
Yes.
relates to my question, Bernie. I think the TDA belongs here, but I do think that when we look at all the pension systems, this is the only system that I think that's principally due to the performance of requiring to move TDA. And in the last couple of years, with a very low return, that's been a very substantial movement. And I
In their MD&A, there's a table at the top of that page. I have,
Yeah.
that page actually shows the net impact, if you will,
right.
on their
And it is very
investment income,
serious.
and it is
Well,
significant.
it's significant, but obviously this coming year we expect the exact opposite. So it's
Right.
definitely a risk, but but
Right.
it is what it is. So that's like you see like I mentioned, over the past which is the expected return in general.
Right. But what we have is we have a benefit where
It's
people
how
have
they
the
treat it.
option to move money back and forth,
Yeah.
right? They can put more money in,
When,
direct more to the TDA, correct?
TDA is a deferred comp dependent. So they could put whatever,
Environment. I'm not getting this kind of return anywhere
I
else.
think your question is they can move back and forth between equity and fixed.
In my view, and maybe it's incorrect, according to the plan,
It is, yeah.
it is a full.
it's not a pension plan,
But-
as far as I'm
But in
concerned.
statute,
That
did
was
that,
the-
they
and-
made it part of the pension. If it was a standalone, like the city's deferred comp, then I can see why we would have them come in and do them separately. But once I have to take the money out of the TR, has a direct impact on the TRS pensions.
What is your interest rate now on, what do the members get for their money, 7% now?
Yeah,
We did
Unbelievable.
modify it down slightly a number of years ago.
yeah.
We at 7. Yeah,
it's not-
and nobody can get 7%
Nobody.
anyplace.
Nobody.
And that's a very, very significant impact, which then has a significant.
Statute, however,
yeah.
so
No,
it's
but I
not
think
a policy
It's
matter.
not policy, but I think people need to be aware of why, when you look at TRS versus a net drop in its net position.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it's-
see.
I find this table very helpful. I think it's very,
You know, you can see in 2014 was obviously a good year for the markets, and we expect 2017 to be even better. But yeah, definitely it's volatile.
Statements and for people to see it. So in fact, if anybody has any interest, they know where it comes from.
There are
It
individual
was hidden
teachers.
from
Individual teachers
Yeah.
who will never, even if they live for a long time, take the corp. Trust me, it's,
Enough.
I mean,
It definitely is something good to have.
Yeah.
I mean, there's many ways to, to use, I've thought over the years, many
Okay.
ways for a family to use it, but we do, we do try to, I think the combining statements help.
that it's highlighted now so that I can see it, whereas in the past, you were looking at the impact and you couldn't quite figure out what was going on,
We all,
because it could be a big driver of the net.
page 13, just in terms of the cash flow, which has a negative cash flow.
Right.
And
And that's exactly what I'm talking about, and I
But the
appreciate the
TDA
fact
has,
that
I mean, is it a risk that if the markets drop, that suddenly you'll have a big exit of money and, we'll have a cash flow issue, something like that? So until now, it's worked. It is volatile.
I see the
and
risk
that's,
as being
yeah.
a cost to the city.
withdrawal by a member from the TDA is age 70 and a half?
The required minimum withdrawal, yes.
Yes. That's the minimum required distribution. And if they do it sooner, they'll
59,
Under 59.
yeah,
after that, they can.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
I
tax
mean, there's no penalty.
yeah.
penalty.
Yeah, it's just the government wants you to
59
start
and a
taking.
half.
right.
Exceptions.
It doesn't
Over
exist
59
anywhere in the
and
world.
They're all taxable.
It doesn't exist in many jurisdictions.
With the 7%.
Guarantee of 7%.
It's like 7%. Does the main fund hold now about
It's
60%?
about 65%, I think.
60?
and-
It used to be 70.
Yes, it's,
Thank God. As far as I'm
not sure
concerned.
if, maybe a little less than 65.
Who does your private equities? You have somebody doing your... Pardon?
Control, I mean, the Bureau of Asset Management.
the Controller's
hires-
office?
Yeah, our internal investments are in stocks and bonds,
Disposal.
basically. I mean, the new, part of the GASB 6768 is, does give the asset allocation. And page 30.
There is somebody here. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize. And the prior actuary almost insisted on it when the actual that they do 70% in equities. It's ridiculous, but that was it. So I'm glad to see there's some reduction.
If I might, Bernie,
Aside from the city with a defined benefit plan at the MTA, the things that you're paying for, I thought was outrageous, and some of the, some of the requirements. Equity, I know there's a large return.
I have another question relative to private
Go
equity.
ahead, ma'am.
If you would. My biggest concern with private equity is continuously our ability to measure it, because I understand the theoretical concepts about why I should potentially get a better return. Is how we come up with what the value is of our private equities.
I hate it.
Unlike the other investments we have, that there's a market out there and I can go to the Wall Street Journal or somebody and pick it up and on the internal players of the market equity to give me a value. And I get very nervous significantly because of that. That, again, is something that could have a significant. So what is it that you can do to help me with my concerns?
Investment side.
Could you speak up, please?
I'm not the person here today to speak from the investment side. Present today, so I can't speak to that question at this point.
It is not their responsibility, but as part of their audit, our auditors do need to get at least some reasonable comfort with those valuations. Can you describe a little bit the test work that you had done on the valuations for private equity?
Equities, and those are audited financial statements from the top-tier firms, and we rely upon that. From our audit perspective, we're looking at there, but also, and it sounds like such a simple step to your point to the volatility of these alternative investments, we actually Google these funds and that to see if anything is out there that would cause the valuation to go down through the opinion date. But to your point, you were saying everything I always say is a partner responsible to sign off on a set of financial statements invested in these alternative investments. Your back kind of stands up a little because there is no open market. Half dozen plus years, there is much more transparency around where those investments are actually being invested. But if you rewound several years ago, you didn't get the financial statements the way you do today in terms of what's the
Information that's available is better than what it was 6 years ago.
without a doubt, without a doubt.
But
And-
in many ways, it's still dated. And then, evaluation, so you're constantly, behind in terms of looking at the available information. Audited financial statements is a good source. The K-1s that are rendered are also a good source. But at the end of the day, you have that, window of
Right.
time, and that's where the Googling, I think, comes in.
It sounds so
You try
simple,
whatever you can to get whatever
but it is an
information.
audit procedure we do.
And my bias coming out, but one of the reasons that some of these private equities get better returns is they're in more speculative
Right.
and
Without a
being in
doubt.
potential risk. So I guess all I'm saying is it's a concern, and whatever we can do to get as much comfort as we can about the value of very, very valuable, desirable to do.
It's, from my perspective, it's the basic question. Do you really need to invest in private equity? I saw at that time, equity firms, most of their income was usurious interest. That they, I says, what the hell? I mean, Let me ask the actuary who came from Ohio, did they have private equity in those accounts?
Can I
The
speak a little?
investment managers want to make money, I guess, and Sir?
It's more in terms of diversification. So teachers actually holds like a 5%
I'm sorry, would you
weight.
introduce yourself for the record, please?
George Ciavice, New York City Comptroller's Office. So teachers currently holds like around private equity, roughly a little over $3 billion. The returns are very percent for, I guess, your fiscal year end 2016. So I think it adds an extra layer of being outside of equities and fixed income securities. It's
Double-digit rate of return is based on the valuations of those own firms, which could in fact change at some other point in time. That's my problem. But it just seems to be an extra layer of risk that we should all be very much aware of, and when we're doing the balancing, be very cognizant of that risk in how much we choose to. Just know that there had been in the past an exceedingly big push to go more and more into private equities, because that was where you were going to. The city would have a lower contribution, there'd be more money in the system, but I just have this fear when one or two of these firms crash on us.
I will say, and I'm not involved with the investment side, nor do I attend board meetings, but it is my understanding that many of the boards have decided to slowly wind down some of these
Oh.
hedge fund, private equity type.
When I would complain with this
Investments.
pension fund to some of the who are consultant investment manager who watch the other, hey, you that kind of incident, but I just don't like it in a public pension fund, but then what do I know? I'm too old.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to point out, I know that a couple of the systems are exiting from the hedge fund space. So just for full disclosure, I also sit as a representative trustee on NYSERS. And also, there are efforts underway led by the Bureau of Asset Management to have greater evaluations within our private equity space as far as oversight and accountability.
Okay.
So there are efforts that are being made. I can't disclose more than that right now.
I understand.
But there are efforts underway.
Okay,
Whenever we're through with this topic, I have a couple of other questions I'd like to ask.
go ahead, dear.
Thank you. Just some minor things, and then I'm curious, on page 5, there's the paragraph right under the table.
What page?
I'm sorry, page 5 in the MD&A, the paragraph right under the summarized statement of net position.
Yes.
Sentence in there says cash balances are typically small. The cash balance is small right now, but looking back over the last 2 years, they actually don't look like they're generally very small. So you may want to remove that comment unless they continue to be small going forward.
Right, I mean, in previous years, we mentioned that it had to do with some, money in the pension fund that was pending at year end. But I mean, in general, obviously, you're trying to invest. You don't want money
Right.
sticking in there.
And is that really the explanation that the very last sentence in that paragraph is trying to convey? Because that sentence didn't make a great deal of sense to me.
Yes.
Basically just saying that there was efforts made to invest more of the idle cash.
There was money, I think, private equity. I think in the previous years, financials, we might have spelled it out a little bit more. I think it was the private equity that was, outstanding.
Good.
So,
On the following page, you talk about a change in the timing of the payment from CUNY, and I'm sum of money. Why the change in the timing of the receipt? Was one of the 2 years highly unusual?
It was a little unusual. I mean, CUNY wanted some, communication in terms of the employer contribution, and I mean, hopefully they're now satisfied and back on track, but
Okay, so you don't think that's going to be a recurring issue?
no.
Good,
I-
thank you. And then there are, and I'm going to speak offline to you and your colleagues about some areas in the financial statements where I would suggest some wording changes, et cetera. One thing that I did notice is if you look at page 18, the activity statement,
Yes.
the to the TDA is shown as a deduction, whereas for BRRS, the same payment is shown up above where the net receipts from other retirement systems. That may be a better place because it's only a deduction for one of the systems. It's an income for the other. So more in that neutral space than in the deductions.
I agree with you, but the GFOA, you know, the group that looks over the cap, and I guess their logic is it's positive in the first column, so it belongs on the deduction side.
Yeah, you may. I mean,
we could talk about it.
yeah, we
but
may want to push
I'll-
back on that.
We could look at it's. I mean,
And I did.
it's. We will talk about it. I don't have much.
Feel
to say.
strongly. Okay, good. I will just point out to you, and I'll make the same comment when BRRS is up, because of the similarity in the TDA for both of those systems, the legal structure
Yes.
of the two. But I think there may be more similarities than the way the financial statements of the two reflect. And it would be great, I know that, you don't look across systems, but we all look across all the systems. And it would be great if we could have more consistency where the underlying facts and circumstances are the same or similar.
It's fine. I mean, let's talk. Because not as alluded to a little bit. We have the QPP and the TDA. Normally, these are separate entities that have no connection and no legal statute per se that. But we do have it. I think we have it a little bit more than BRRS. So we should just talk and
Yeah.
make sure everyone agrees.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I could ask the actuary as long as you're here. How do you phase in the gains and losses over 5 years?
It's over 6 years.
I'm sorry?
Distinguish between for accounting and financial reporting versus contributions when you talk about your approaches.
Used for valuation purposes and funding.
Cent a year or varies?
Percent for the first 4 years, and then 20% for the last 2 years,
I see. All right, that seems,
to add up to 100. 6 years at 20% would
always
not add
good,
up to
yeah.
100.
no, but the reason I'm asking is if the world was simple, and it isn't, and the market stayed where it is for the equities, I think there should be a bang for the dollar on these funds, or am I crazy? I think so.
A bang for the dollar on the.
Yeah,
I understand your question.
I mean, we had a positive net appreciation at the end of 2015, and a rather large depreciation at the end of 2016. I should think, it would be a little better. More on the
Keep in
assets.
mind, these are.
I'm sorry?
Keep in mind that for the actual value of assets used for valuation purposes is different for financial disclosure purposes. So
Yeah, but
these
for
are.
contributions, you phase in the gains and losses.
Correct.
Right? But for valuation, it's the actual.
These are financial disclosure.
I'm sorry?
These are financial disclosure, so this is not for valuation. The valuation, it has to do with funding the obligations of the pension plan. This is for accounting purposes, for disclosure purposes, and there's no smoothing in this.
Go ahead.
So, Bernie, basically, what you see in the financial statements for investment returns in a given year is the actual returns in the given year.
Yes, I understand that.
The actuary takes into account those returns on a smoothing basis over
Yeah.
a course of
She has to
6
smooth
years
them,
in
right.
her calculation for funding purposes. Those are two separate and distinct things.
Okay. I know Mark Kaplan, who wasn't here, was against the smoothing. He says it seems, from a legal perspective, incorrect, but I think every pension fund does it. Otherwise, you really would get shocked.
Continuing on that line, we're seeing a slight decline across the systems of their funded ratio. That's principally attributable to the change in the assumptions that have been flowed in?
There's a lot of pieces that go into it, I think. One of which obviously is the asset returns, but keep in mind that funded ratio is just a standard, it's a stagnant measure
Right.
as of a specific point in time. And I would, use caution in deducing a financial health of a pension plan based on that measure.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think I'm perceiving the slight drop I'm seeing primarily has to do with the fact that it's reflective of new assumptions, which are more conservative. So there hasn't actually been a change in the financial viability of the system. We're just recognizing the new reality of mortality tables and other things, which results in that slightly lower number, which then adjusts your contribution. And therefore, if your contribution is going up, it should then tend to be self-corrective to that drop.
I would say you're properly funding the plan that way, yes.
Yes. So the slight drop principally is attributable to updating and having better assumptions, and those better assumptions drive into my new contribution number, and therefore I'm tending to make the contribution to correct for
Right.
that.
I would say that's one piece of the driver, yes.
Was there anything else that's approaching that in significance other than the TDAs and TRS?
I don't see any big ticket items that would drive the funded ratio down even further
Okay.
in the pipeline.
All right, thank you.
If I may ask one more question. Looking at the balance sheet on page 17, or I should say the statement of net position, the first grouping under investments where it says fixed funds, pooled New York City pension assets, and I know we've had some discussions
Yeah.
because I'm not generally comfortable with that term pooled, but the title here almost implies that it's pooled between various pension systems. Are these commingled with other or co-invested with other pension systems, or just within TRS? The title pooled New York City pension fund assets.
The Bureau of Asset Management, manages, the full portfolio. You could have, obviously, Russell 3000, let's say, or assets of all the different systems, so that they're being,
Jointly.
managed jointly.
Is that different from, say, the variable funds? Aren't those also managed system-wide?
Yeah, but it's just TRS.
Just
funds,
TRS for
there's
those?
no-
Okay,
yeah.
so the only pooled with other systems is that fixed fund?
Yes.
Thank you.
TRS. Different custodian, different.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions or statements? Maybe, they're very good, by the way. You're the partner on it? They're very, what?
A lot of back and forth this year.
Yeah, no, they were very, very, very good. At one time, they were so thin that I asked for the CAFAs. So then when I got the CAFAs, I said, what is this? So somebody said, you asked for it. But we don't need them with these kinds of statements. Has an exact interest. But I think we have a management letter
So for teachers, we were able to issue a no material to control practices around the IT.
And in many cases, you said they met your requirements, one or two needed improvement.
Right. So Richard is our IT partner
Yes, sir.
here at Marks Paneth can answer. He's much more skilled than I am in the technology area.
You still use Prudential to do the TD, to do, no?
No.
I'm too old, I remember it was Prudential for
No,
years.
we've been moving between different systems,
Okay.
so, mainframes, so it's always, we're actually doing a phase-in of a new system, so that's, I think
I
that
know
was a
there was-
first point in their, suggestions.
No, they responded on every one, I think, and there seemed to be essentially agreement.
Hope,
Yeah.
if I might ask, this management letter is in a very different format than the management letter from the other system, the management letters for the other systems. I'm curious as to why.
So for BRRS, there was a material weakness, and so you put together, because there was a prior period
Yeah.
adjustment. So that is truly a report. These are what we consider to be enhancements, and it's in a memo form. You're not
I'm actually
required.
thinking
When you say.
technology
yeah.
observations.
Yeah. So, yes. That.
Looks like a work paper.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I provided like both the first, I wasn't sure if you guys just wanted the first page, which was just,
No, we wanted the whole thing.
We share. I'm not.
Yes. I'm looking on page 2 and 3.
Yeah,
Right, the
no,
cyber
okay.
security table was not in the other ones, right? So it's
Right.
in this one.
Is that because
It's
they?
just a format we use, so a lot of boards like the idea of being able to sum the comments without
Right.
going through them.
But you
not
only put it
required.
in the one, not in the other systems.
On the IT comments? And
Yes.
it might have been just a preference. I'm not sure why there was a difference. It wasn't meant to be anything more than,
Okay. There's also, we noticed, whereas the other systems you raised some concerns or had some suggestions about protecting personally identifiable information, there was no comment here. Does TRS do something differently or better than other systems in terms of protecting that data?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that is, please?
Yeah, the controls are very tight, and they're using digital controls to transfer the information between either using the Do It framework, or they're using their own framework. I think of all the systems, they're very happy with what I saw.
That's great. I hope that you can help the other systems understand how to
Absolutely.
do that,
Sure,
because that
absolutely.
would be a great help to everyone. Thank you.
And in terms of the other suggestions, we have to figure out when the best time is to implement them in terms of, like one thing mentions like having one repository of all the passwords of the agency. I think that's a standard that places do. So we're looking into that, and, as we have projects and, things need to be, some of these suggestions, it's not like we could just turn on a switch and implement them all right away, but we're looking and we appreciate the suggestions.
Michelle,
Actually, I'm sorry, I had one more question.
Go ahead.
Just at the end, the very last comment, the transporting checks. Basically, you talk about needing to work with FISA. I'm curious, I don't think I saw this comment with other systems, so I'm curious why that might be an issue for you where it might not have been an issue for other systems.
I think there is a difference in terms of where our checks are all printed. I think we're looking into this with our new system, actually, what the best way to go, but whether you just hand over like a payroll file to FISA, which we do and everyone does for the pension payroll, and then what do you do about your non-periodics? Do you also hand over a file? Do you hand over a check file? Or do you just print your checks and send it over to, FISA to
I see.
sign it there?
So right now, you're printing them and sending them over
Yeah, for the
hard copy.
non-periodic, yes.
And the other systems are in fact, sending over a file and they're being printed at
NICERS, I
FISA?
believe, is manual, but they have enough compensating controls to account for any risk. They gave a very detailed response to
Okay.
that comment.
Thank
When
you.
do you need their data for the CAFA? By September 30th, or you could slip a little?
No, earlier than that.
Pardon me?
We get the data from them earlier than that.
Earlier than September 30th. And the actuary also needs the data quite soon
Yeah.
to do her valuations.
Yes, that's why we need it from them earlier.
Pardon me, Dave?
That's why we need it from them earlier.
more like
I
late.
will say this is the tightest, most difficult time frame of our whole CAFR, because not so much teachers, but definitely for NICERS, where we have city component units that are members of that system.
Yeah.
Right? We have to wait until we have audit reports for them to be able to put the numbers into their financials, so they can give us back audited financials that then have to go into our CAFR. So that
It's a
cycle is difficult.
multi-employer plan, I know, and it makes it difficult. I think net NICERS used to be about 60% of the total, we used to say, the city part. And then you had the TA and the HHC and et cetera, et cetera.
I think it's similar.
Following up on Michelle's questions.
Pardon me?
Following up on Michelle's questions, the whole issue of different systems across the 5 pension systems is something that's always been hanging out there.
Yeah.
And we need to focus on a way of either combining or being able to utilize best practices and resources across those 5 systems. Historically, they've tended to be 5 independent fiefdoms. And whatever we can do to identify best practices and
Well, that's
share
good.
that information and encourage it, and as much as possible, even sharing processes would be a very desirable thing to happen.
Yeah, we try to, I mean, we're actually going to NICERS tomorrow, so it does happen sometimes.
Okay, and I would strongly encourage, as much as we can possibly move in that direction. I mean, all these people were paid off in the same payroll system before they went on to 5 different pension systems.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
We've kind of went from operating as one database to splitting it across 5. And consequently, there's different levels of quality. And in some systems, it's not, you know, it may be different in different systems where their best things are. It's just unfortunate that we can't blend those together better. I'm not suggesting policy-wise. I mean, the boards can be the boards, they can figure out what they want to do and how they, but how you keep a data of a retiree should not be something that you can't do in a similar fashion and use the same best practices.
Particularly when it comes to like encrypted information and things like that, that's
Yeah.
for sure, but.
Let's use the same skills.
But we do offer different, you know, obviously there are
There's
differences.
different
in that-
benefits
different-
across the systems, but the general processing in what kind of information you need to keep and has a lot of similarities to it.
Many years ago, I don't mean to delay, but we tried to merge BERS with NICERS. We lost. We couldn't do it. And at that time, BERS didn't have as many part-timers, you know, the fact that part-timers all of a sudden got pensions, that, you know, the paraprofessionals really grew that system, so we thought that would have been nice, but we lost that battle.
I also,
And I think it's a good point, though, if, you know, there could be more commonality between them in terms of reporting and whatnot, both for the actuary and for the auditors.
I think some of the standards like the.
I'm sorry, sir?
I'm sorry, just like do it, I don't know what it stands
Yeah,
for,
it's-
but I.
Department of Information Technology
Yeah.
and
Right,
Telecommunications.
I think part of their role is to try to make, you know, make sure, you know, everyone following standards.
Thank you. And anything that anybody knows that can bring forth, that we can encourage that effort, would be very desirable.
If there are no more questions of the teachers' retirement system, I want to thank them very much.
Thank you.
And we should move on to another fund. The next one on the agenda is BERS, the Board of Ed Retirement System. They used to be little, they got bigger.
I had failed to make this request earlier, but I would ask that the first time anybody speaks, for the record, that you identify yourself so that our minute.
Could you be kind enough to introduce yourselves, folks?
Good morning. My name is Jean-Daniel Demond. I'm the chief accountant at Buzz, and I have with me Sandy Rich, who is the executive director, and my assistant,
You're the
Chidra.
executive director, sir, of the system?
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of summary,
Do you want to make a statement using the MD&A? Go ahead, sir.
Yes,
Take
okay.
your time.
Yes.
Just speak into.
in terms of the statement, we can say that Buzz assets crossed the $5 billion mark this year. And also we say we service around 60,000 people in our facilities. Our QPP position closed at 3.42, and the TDA went up by 190 million to 1.63 billion. Investment is part of that because investment increased by 200 million, and so the net total asset increased by 1 billion. We believe the main reason behind the investment, even though it's a very light increase, we're talking less than 1%. So, but we believe in our allocation of the assets. So this is in terms of performance. The main thing also that I would like to point out is Buzz had to restate the 2015 statement. And we made a note on that. And on page 58, you can see we explain why the restatement had to happen.
On what page?
Page 58.
58.
You must be in the CAFR.
On the CAFR.
We only have the audited financial statement, standalone documents. So I don't know if any of you have that handy, so you could give. Thank you very much.
It's page 38 financials.
You say page 38? Yeah, I didn't see a 58. All right, thank you, dear. Yeah, I forgot they have a TDA program as well.
Yes.
So every member of Buzz could participate in the TDA program? I guess it's the...
Yes, that's correct.
It's a deferred compensation program. And what do you pay for the...
For the interest, you mean?
Yeah.
No, it's split. It's 8.25% for general, and for UFC is 7%.
7%?
Yeah, for EFC members, but the other members is 8.25%.
Do you know what the breakdown is proportionately between those two?
Between members?
Between the members who are receiving the 7% versus the 8.25%?
I don't have it here, but I can send it to you.
That'd be great. If you could do that both on a number basis of participants and also dollars, that would be really helpful.
Okay, I'll do that.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a few questions?
Go ahead, please, dear.
Great. Starting with a comment that I made with TRS, actually, and which, JD, I've had the opportunity to speak with you about. TRS has a table in their MD&A which is very helpful in understanding the impact of the TDA's fixed return, guaranteed interest, or statutory interest on the QPP. And it's something that you might want to consider putting into your financial statement MD&A.
After talking to you briefly, we approached that, and then we're considering it, and we'll have a separate talk with you about that.
Terrific.
To see how we can put that into our cover. But
Right.
it's being on the discussion.
I'd also be interested in knowing how you identified, and I should have asked this of TRS, I'm sorry, how you identified which portion of the investment income you attributed the total, not not the percentage allocation that's done in the table, but of the total investment income for the fixed return fund. That number is not elsewhere in your financial statements, but you have that from our
No,
BAM or from?
Yes, from BAM.
Got it, thank you.
Yes.
On page 9, whoops, sorry. On page 9 and 10, I just wanted to make a suggestion, brief suggestion, that you set up your financial statements so that these would be on facing pages, so that somebody opening the financial statements can look, at both the current year and the prior year. I know that, I think you do that in the CAFR, but
Yes.
not in these. So if you would do that here, that would be helpful, since this is what the committee got. On page 11, oh no, I'm sorry, that was the same comment. I think that's it, thank you.
Who does your securities lending?
That's BAM.
The asset management?
Yes.
Yep. It's pretty high for them. They're a smaller fund, but who watches the securities lending?
I think it's Citibank. I'm not certain, but I think Citibank may be
It's-
doing
yeah, it's
your,
under
maybe
Citibank.
acting as the agent, and they would make sure that the collateral level is appropriate.
You got to watch it. We had some problems way back when. And they're a smaller fund, and I see that they do a lot of securities lending. You can make money on it, but you just got to be, somebody has to watch it, I think. All right. Do you have a table in here? I don't remember if I saw it or not. Okay. Of your active members, the 25,000 approximately, how many are part-timers, would you say?
No, I don't have that figure
You don't
right.
have that.
I will send it to you. The number of
I
part-timers.
think you could send it to the secretary.
Definitely.
Ms. Thompson,
Okay.
and it would be helpful.
But as I believe within the five
But
system,
that-
the
they're
most titles, most diverse titles. We have a lot.
Essentially, sir, they're the paraprofessionals on the Board of
yes.
Education.
Yes, school aides.
Yeah.
Just since it hasn't come up yet, maybe I'll mention the restatement. Since it hasn't come up yet in any of our questions, maybe I'll mention the restatement. We worked closely with BRRS and to understand some numbers in their financial statements that were a little bit confusing. And they did an awful lot of work to research and came to the conclusion with us that they needed to reclassify certain assets from the TDA to the QPP, which they did with great help from our audit firm in identifying the exact amounts that needed to be restated. And obviously, that also put some burden on the auditor in the actuary's office. So I just really want to commend everyone. That was a major effort, and I think a major improvement to these financial statements. It did result in a restatement, which you'll hear more about from the
It may
auditors.
have been incorrect from an accounting perspective, but it was great when they were off the books, the TTA, right? It was great. I remember we asked one of the previous, even before the other actuary, about the TDA. He says, it's not my money. We said, why? There was no benefit to the city from it.
But
it
there is a
turned out
potential
to be
cost
cost,
or
yeah.
a potential benefit to the city,
Yeah.
right? It magnifies the direction of the market.
But have we seen we haven't seen the benefit in the last few years. We've seen the cost.
Well, when we had an 11% return, it benefited
Okay.
the city, right? Because we essentially got the difference
it'll
between the
happen
11% and the 8.25 or the 7%.
Okay.
So it's like leverage.
All right. I think they're a small fund unless any of the members have any other questions. We should move on. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Just within the, this is for the auditors, you mentioned.
You're at the management letter, sir?
Yes, the management letter.
Go ahead.
On page 3, on number 7, oversight and control of IT access, we were not provided with specific policies and procedures for the oversight and control of IT access to the production of data. Why did they not provide that, or why was that not provided?
BUZZ was in the middle of a major I'd say staffing and readjustment. So at the time, we only had the IT director was there only for about a week when everybody came.
That's right.
And let me add that on May 30th, we will go live on our new computer system. We're currently in training right now, and it has been 47 years since a new system was installed. The practical reality is whatever we would have delivered to them would have been garbage.
Yeah, I mean, the Russians couldn't have hacked it if they wanted to.
Well, they could have hacked it. It wouldn't have helped them.
Yeah.
And they might have helped us.
Yeah, yes.
No, I say that because these policies should be written and enumerated, and should be the simple.
Yes.
It shouldn't even require. I mean, it should be in a file on a shared network where all someone has to do is go to it, print it out, and give it to them or email it to them, because we live in a time and an environment where incidents are happening all the time.
Yes.
And if there aren't procedures and policies in place, so and just like this situation where someone is in or out or new, then who does it fall upon to respond to that incident? And so I mean, I would just urge you to have these things in a written and accessible place.
This is one of I believe the top objective, not just for the IT but for the administrative and security, and that is being undertaken.
And to give you some comfort, as of May 30th, DO-IT will be our, the phalanx that faces off against the world for us.
Sure.
Currently, we're exposed to Pru, and I guess the practical reality is their system is sufficiently old that no one knows how to access it.
Okay. No, I mean,
Protection.
It was interesting, on page 2 of 8 of the management report, it says that certain records you send to the office of the actuary, and they return to Burrs by bike messenger. You have bike messenger?
Sealed.
But I think this goes back to my.
But I mean, the VA lost records for millions of vets. It was taken taken from a laptop, and as technology advances and miniaturizes, there are easier and easier ways of moving, and of stealing. And so I would urge you really to think about how do you best protect this information, because once someone's social security number is out there, once their pension identification number is out there, all sorts of harm can be caused, and there is risk then to the system. As you may know, bond agencies are now looking at your the network security of our systems, and as far as the issuance of bonds for the city. So there is a larger risk here. So I would just want to make sure that there's an understanding of that.
And I'll reiterate, we have best practices someplace in some of our systems, and if we would share that information across the systems better,
exactly,
we would go a long ways in addressing some of these problems.
I mean, the cost of it also could be reduced in some aspects, because rather than having it...
It's both. Right. I mean, it'd be nice to save money, but it would also be nice to have quality
gold standard
across the whole system.
To add to that, we have reached through the other retirement system to know what's their best practice, and then while trying to put this together.
I noticed that in response to many of these comments, you stated your agreement, but not a particular plan to implement. Is that because you're in this process of gathering best practices?
That is correct.
It might have been useful if you had put that somewhere in this, because it does appear a little bit non-responsive.
And just to echo Michelle's point, I mean, if there could be a sense of, we anticipate completing this in 6 months or 9 months, so that there is a level of accountability and metrics that you can then hold yourself accountable to as well.
Yes.
So I would just like to add to that. So next year, when we're in front of you again, we will take these comments that were issued for this year and give you an update on those.
Yes, thank you.
Coupled with any of the new practices that are in place. So,
All right, then, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. We'll move on to the New York City Employees Retirement System.
And again, I just really want to thank everybody who was involved in a major restatement and to make the financial reports much more accurate.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Our auditors especially went well above and beyond the call of duty in helping us resolve that issue.
thank you, Michelle, but I'd like to just commend Mike Kaplan.
Thank you.
He had sleepless nights on that one.
I think we all did.
Oh, John is here. I remember him for years, yeah. You can't keep a good man down. He looks like he's ready to die. How are you, John? Okay, okay. How many years do I know you?
Enough to be here.
How many years do I know you, sir? A long time.
Well, it's almost 44 years
Yeah.
that I've worked. Yeah.
It's a long time. And a complicated system, too.
Yeah.
A real complicated one. Do you people have a statement based on the MD&A, or
Yeah, just a brief summary.
just talk into the mic, please,
Sure.
sir? Thank you.
I'm Michael Goldson from NICERS.
Oh, yes.
Just have a
Go ahead,
brief,
introduce yourselves, I'm sorry.
and John,
Chung Gong from NICERS.
of course you know John.
John Hoffman, NICERS.
Chief Accountant.
And, okay, so, as I mentioned, it's just a brief summary. 2016 was a year of modest improvement in the financials. We earned a return of, for the overall portfolio of 1.5%, 1.52%. It's not quite the assumed rate of 7%, but at least it wasn't negative. Okay, so we had our equity portfolio earned 1.68, slightly less than the Russell
bless you.
3000, which was 2.14. International equities earned negative 8.4%, but that was better than the benchmark, which is negative 10.24%. Fixed income earned 4.29%. Private equity returned 6.36%,
Again,
which
with the
was a
private
little
equity.
better than the benchmark. And private real estate also earned it better than the benchmark. We earned 12.95% versus the benchmark of 11.9%. Contributions, employer contributions rose 6.5% from $3.2 billion to $3.4 billion. And benefit payments and withdrawals increased only 3.9%. So the cash flow from the contributions and the investments was enough to cover the benefits. And net position overall restricted for benefits increased very small percent, less than 1%, to $55.4 billion. Despite these marginal improvements in the face of the financials, the actuarially determined fiduciary net position as a percentage of the plan's total pension liability, it decreased slightly from, decreased from 73.13% in 15 to 69.57% in 16. We have the VSFs that are consolidated with our statements, much smaller, of course, than the TDAs as a percentage of our fund. There are 5 VSFs overall, and it's probably about $5 or $6 million in total that we paid out. The COVSF did not have a payout this year.
So you don't have to transfer any funds to the variable supplement funds?
Yeah, we do. We transfer for the 4 police funds, small amount, like, again, 5 or 6 million. For the COVSF, they're not funded yet until, we wouldn't transfer anything to them until 2019, when the fund, when it becomes guaranteed, but it's not guaranteed yet. And the funds weren't enough to pay benefits the COVSF did not hold enough assets to pay benefits.
So the VSF didn't have enough funds to pay the benefits, so
Correct.
Therefore you had to make the transfer?
Exactly. No, there's no transfer. They have their own, they earn their own funds
Yeah.
based on their own assets.
I remember we made some changes many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It would have, we saved millions to the city. There- yeah, you're pretty much, what is it, about 60% in equities by now?
I think we're, domestic equities are 33.8. The internationals are 16.8, so overall maybe like 50%.
50 some odd
between,
percent.
yeah, domestic and international.
And again, let me get to the income statement.
May I ask something, Bernie, while you're looking for it?
Pardon me?
May I ask some questions while you're looking for
Go
that?
ahead, go ahead.
Thank you. On page 5 in the MD&A, I just had a couple of quick questions. The first is, in the middle of the page, the short paragraph, other assets decreased. You mentioned the city is paying its additional required contribution. I'm not familiar with that. What is an additional required contribution?
It should just be required contribution.
Okay.
I don't think we need to do word additional there.
Okay, great. And then the changes in payables related to timing of closing transactions, why would that be so dramatic? Is that a factor of the calendar this year? And why would the timing of when those purchases and sales close be so different between years?
Right, I noticed that also. I think it's just the timing, the luck of the draw in terms of where you are in terms of your trading. I don't see, unless BAM knows, I don't see a specific reason why the payables or receivables might be more at any given time. They fluctuate.
Yeah, I mean, in those situations, we just take the information from
BAM.
from the controller's office, from State Street.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I was looking at your securities lending. It brings in quite a bit of money, almost $30 million. And again, the Bureau of Asset Management keeps a close watch on that. Of course, we had some trouble way back when.
Yes, we're also building additional oversight.
sorry?
We're also building additional oversight of our securities lending
Yeah.
this year.
It's a nice dollar. I mean, I guess it's, for want of a better term, it's an easy dollar, except when they go belly up, which that happens once. I don't. But you still have the variable supplement funds for certain police because they didn't go over with the transfer to the other police department, to the regular police department. Is that it?
Well, no, they all went over to the police department, but what we have other than for the correction officers, they're the people who retired prior to the merger.
I see.
So they were already retired at the time of that
Thank
merger.
you. Thank you for the clarification. I didn't remember that. It's small, but it's they're there.
And the population shrinks each
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
it's a
over
shrinking
time, it
population.
will
Yes,
shrink,
maybe
yeah.
about 8,000 altogether.
And the benefit to the correction officers on the variable sub is the same like to the police.
Right, 12,000 per
It's
year.
the same size.
But only if there's enough money to pay.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
When we, so many years ago, when we looked at the variable subs, the city was getting hurt on them. So with negotiations and whatnot, one of the benefits in for the negotiation was that the market had gone down. So the city was able to make some changes with the help of some consulting actuaries at Pete Marwick. I don't think they have that large an actuarial practice now, but they did at the time. And we were able to, one of the things, of course, when you're doing a negotiation, you had to provide a benefit, which before they could pay, not pay, and I think that was an improvement. You had to be a service retiree. That was an improvement. And I would say the major improvement that we did at that time was if you had the money to pay the benefits that you were required to pay, why skim assets from the main fund? And that was part of it. I mean, it was far more complicated than that. It was prior to Mother's Day in 1988. I remember we worked so long and hard that when I went to get a card, the stores were closed. But I mean it. It was terrific. It helped a great deal. And we used to have, is Amitabh, he's retired?
He's retired.
Amitabh, yeah. He used to say we saved the city billions. I think we did. We had a lot of clever people working on it. And the labor guy that we had in OMB said he called it the sluice gates. You didn't have to transfer if they had enough money. And, you know, they developed a deficit. They had to first overcome it. At one time, it was all benefits to the variable sub-funds. And I was told that the state, when they saw what the city did, just to get the uniformed forces to invest their funds into equities, they basically, on the bill jacket, I'm paraphrasing, said the city is crazy to give this kind of a benefit. But that's what happened. And I think it's become far better, and it didn't hurt any of the uniformed members, except those that did not go out on a service retirement, were sued on and off, but that's neither here nor there. But it's really a pain in the neck for you, John, that you have all these little ones. When did the correction officers get it? What year? I don't remember that.
About 12 years ago.
Yeah,
About 12 years ago?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But for a number of years, they didn't get anything because.
No, I know.
Because there was no skim.
It's an extra job. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of extra work, but you got to do it. For the Bureau of Asset Management, you use the Russell 3000 to gauge all your equity earnings, is that it?
Yeah, that varies. For, I guess, a blend, we would use three.
Speak, is your mic on?
We would use the Russell 3000 for those that are in small, mid cap, and large cap, and then it varies. If you're in mid cap, or small cap, you would fall on the Russell 2000.
Do you still
or
invest in
1000.
small caps?
Yeah. Each.
No, all right.
Yeah, they do. They still have Brown, and Brown is one of the top managers for a small cap.
Yeah. On the alternative investments, what is that essentially? Real estate and hedge funds? What is their alternative investments?
For NICers, or?
Pardon me?
For NICers?
Yeah.
Alternative investments would be hedge funds. They still have a small position in hedge funds. I believe fiscal year 2016, they had around close to 800 million. As of March, it's around 200-something million. They're winding down slowly. I believe they should be fully out of hedge funds
Okay.
in 2018. But they're also invested in private equity, private real estate,
Yeah,
and infrastructure.
You consider private equity an alternative investment?
Yes.
You classify it as that?
Yes, it falls under
I'm sorry?
alternative. Yes, it does fall under
Yeah.
alternative investments.
Do we have any, let's,
most of the
we ought
issues
we ought to
overlap.
turn, yes, sir, I'm sorry.
No.
No, I
further
thought you
comments.
said something else, son. We ought to go to the management letter of NICE's. On transporting the checks, you never lost a check?
Never lost a check in all those years. And there are compensating controls as well. If we, if we did lose a check and somebody tried to cash it, it wouldn't be on the list of checks
Okay.
that the bank knows about that is going to be cashed, so it would kick out.
All right. I think the recommendation, though, of having a secure courier service would be a good idea. Let's, what is your accounting? What do you, is it, what system do you use for your accounting?
We use ACPAC is our accounting system, where we input information into ACPAC from the information that we get. Nowadays, it's actually part of SAGE. So
I'm sorry?
right now, it's actually part of SAGE.
Oh, this is part of a state system?
No, SAGE, SAGE.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It used to be called ACPAC up till about a few months ago. We upgraded, it's still the same company, but now they call the system Sage 300.
Okay.
Yeah, they were bought out by, one or another.
I think the comments are all right, except with the transporting of the checks. Does anybody have any comment? Go ahead, Michelle.
Looking on page 1, you, in the management's response to the first comment, additionally, investment reconciliations will be reviewed by someone other than the original preparer. Why are reconciliations not, or why would they have not been reviewed previously?
Well, yeah. Well, generally, they were.
Okay.
But in this particular situation, 'cause we had to set up separate, when we account for, let's say, the bonds during the year, they're not split up according to categories. You mean like treasuries and the foreign and the, and so at the end of the year, we had to do under the new breakdown that became standard last year or the year before. So then we have to go into the main GL account and break it down into the components.
So you're doing different reconciliations than you had done in the past?
Yes.
And it didn't sort of get a standardized review? But now, is it now being reviewed?
Yes.
Okay. On the second...
It's generally only something that's done at the end of the year.
Oh, I see.
So it will be.
It will be reviewed.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. The bottom of that page, the response to the census data, says you're going to consider including an annual plan. what, has there been consideration and has there been a decision?
Yes, I spoke to the Director of Internal Audit over at NICERS, and he's going to include that in this plan.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
I guess the fact that you no longer have to deliver paper to the office of the actuary, you can do it electronically, has been helpful to your office, I would think, yeah. And it may be more expeditious to do it that way, yeah. It's a big system and it's a lot of work. All right. Are there any more questions? Mr. Khan, do you, no? Bud, okay. Thank you again, folks.
Thank you.
We'll move to the police pension fund. Would you people be kind enough to introduce yourselves? Speak into the mic.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Sunny B. I'm the acting chief accountant.
Acting chief.
The chief accountant?
Acting.
Acting chief, okay.
Good morning. My name is Charles Mastretta, Chief Fiscal Officer, Police Pension Fund.
Okay.
Good morning, Camelia Todd Ross from Police Pension Fund.
You're not located in Police Plaza anymore?
No, we're at 233 Broadway.
And I'm just curious, are any of you officers of the law, or you're all civilians?
We're civilians.
I'm sorry?
The majority of us, there are 137 civilians at the fund, and there are a small component.
A small number of officers?
Uniform, yes.
Uniform force, people. Things have changed at one time.
That they have. That they
Yeah,
have.
At one time. Do you have a little statement to make on the MD&A?
Yes. The combined financial statement of the police pension fund
You've
for...
got to talk into the mic. Thank you.
The combined financial statement of the police pension fund for 2016 shows that net position restricted for benefit increased by 153.4 million or 4.44% due to net increase in assets and growth of national economy. During 2016, the fund reported in earnings from interest and security lending, while investment expense ended slightly lower. Dividend income dropped, while benefit payment and withdrawal reached to 2.8 billion due to the increase of number of retirees. Member contribution increased by 3.6%, primarily due to more electing to increase the member deductions. Employer contribution increased by 3.7% due to change in the post-retirement mortality rates and an increase in amortization payment. Fund incurred 18.5 million in administrative expense, an increase of 3.2% due to settlement of union contracts.
I think they were the only fund that had an increase, 16 over 15, if I'm not mistaken. All right, very good.
On page 11, the security lending fees should be bracketed.
Okay.
On page 11, your security lending fees should be bracketed. Otherwise, it looks like it should be added.
Yeah,
They don't say
it's a
less.
cost. There's a cost for the fees.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think if we were to total all the securities lending, that's quite a bit. So just one person in your office does it, or you have a few people doing it? Who was the outside manager of it? Which bank?
So
What?
Citibank is our
Citibank?
outside securities lender.
Used to be Mellon,
Right.
okay.
But we do
And they
have,
give you periodic reports?
they give us monthly reports we get. from
Monthly
them,
reports
yeah.
on it?
I think Bank of New York was.
You got to speak up.
Bank of New York was the one that had the, I guess, the major losses with the Lehman Securities.
Yeah, a few years ago, there was a
that's
a
the
nice
problem
bang
you're
in the
talking
head
Yeah.
that we didn't expect. All right.
But that's just the cost of investing in securities. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it was just a bad call on their behalf.
Okay. This fund made over $20 million on the securities lending. Was it popular in your prior life, if I may ask? Were they also doing securities lending
They were.
in Ohio?
Yeah.
They were, okay. There's nothing new under the sun, I guess, in pensions? No. All right. Now, on the variable subs, I couldn't see it, or maybe I missed it. Did you have to transfer?
This year, no transfer.
No transfer?
No.
They have a lot of money.
Last year we transferred 590 million.
How much?
590.
590 million?
Yes. For superior officers and police officers.
And this year you didn't have to?
No.
They had enough assets to pay their benefits?
Right.
Thank God. And what determines the transfer if equity earnings exceed fixed income earnings, I think?
I think so. I think
Yeah, I
actually
think
that's
that
the
was it.
transfer.
Right? Mike, that was it? Oh, Bud one, I'm sorry, I should have asked Bud.
There's a difference
I don't
between,
remember.
there's
I'm
a
sorry,
difference,
dear?
there's a difference between the skim and the amount that needs to be transferred from the QPP if there's not enough in the VSF fund. The skim is determined on a basis of the treasury rate, 110% of the hypothetical return, which is an average of the 10-year treasury rate. And if the equity
There's a
return.
hypothetical interest rate, isn't there, that helps determine the skim?
Correct. Deduced from an average of the treasury rate. And if the equity return exceeds that, then there's a skim over to the VSF. But when a transfer from the QPP occurs, that's when there's not enough fund in the VSF balance to pay out the benefits. Those are two separate transfers.
Yeah, that was one of the improvements being made, regardless of what the calculation was. If there was enough funds for the VSF to pay benefits, we didn't have to have a transfer.
Correct, but if there is a skim, if there is an amount that's in excess of the hypothetical interest rate, there still is a skim over there. And a skim is a form of
Your
transfer.
office determines if there's a skim or not, is that
Correct.
it?
But also, if there's an underage, those underages build up over time
Yes,
and then get offset against a positive year skim,
right.
which
That was
might
something
still
we-
also mean there's no
That
skim
was
or a
something we
small
developed
skim
too.
in that year.
Right.
Okay, that's still in effect.
Yes, that you have to, the skim has to cover the prior accumulated deficits.
Okay, all right, now I won't ask any.
So the office, the actuary actually calculates the skim now and not the controller's office anymore?
The controller's office provides us with the returns on the equity, and then we calculate if that return exceeds the hypothetical interest rate.
Okay.
The returns on equity and the returns on fixed, or just the returns on equity?
Just the equity portion.
Pardon me?
Just the equity portion.
Equity. You can do the fixed you can do yourself, is that it, or?
The fix is not,
It doesn't enter into it?
correct.
Things have changed, yeah. There's no required interest, that is 6%.
No, the fixed income was never part of the calculation. It was only the equities that was ever part of the calculation for the skim.
Before we made the changes, the fixed income entered into it. And, all right. But we did a lot on it. I was trying to familiarize myself. So a police officer can retire with 15 years of service?
No, 20.
The original ones, the Tier 1 ones, right?
No,
Always 20.
20.
20.
He won't get a benefit, but he can retire. He or she can retire. I think I'm right.
Vesting takes place after 10
They
years.
get a vested
Right,
benefit, yeah.
but their
To
benefit
get a
is,
payment, they have to have 20 years.
Yes.
No? Are there a lot of retirements after 20 years? I guess there is.
Yes.
At least on the rank and file, on the officers, things are different. I don't know, I think they're pretty good, right? Okay. No. Basically, the Office of Asset Management invests the same percentage for each fund in terms of equities, fixed, et cetera?
It varies by system.
Pardon me, sir?
It varies by system. In teachers' case, they have.
I don't hear you, sir.
It varies by system. So if you look at teachers' overall
I mean,
exposure.
whatever the trustees may
Yes.
want to change,
Yes.
and you'll honor that change.
Yeah, we.
But
there was
it's
actually
pretty
a big-
consistent.
No, that was, they actually voted on a new asset allocation policy December of last year. And that's actually taken effect now. I believe it's almost complete. They wanted to change their policy. They were somewhat overweight in domestic equities, so they shifted a lot towards international. And then between mortgage and investment grade securities within fixed income, they liquidated most of their positions, and the proceeds shifted to long-term duration treasury notes. But yeah, that gets voted on, and the boards all approve what ranges and what policy they, or weights they want to have within each asset class.
Okay.
If you turn to page 21, it says that it's asset allocation.
I'm sorry?
If you turn to page 21, it says asset allocation, page 21.
Yes, I was looking at
Yeah.
that, yes. I think of all the systems, they were the only one that showed a positive increase from 2015 to 2016. All right. I don't have, does anybody have any more questions
I only have questions on the management letter.
on the management letter? All right, let's go to that. I had just a question before that. Who is the supervisor, not by name, but by title, of your office? Is it a civilian or a uniform force member?
It's Executive Director on leave from the Police Department.
I'm sorry, it's a uniform member?
Uniform member on leave from the Police Department.
Okay.
I noticed in the first comment, financial statements, it says that the statements are prepared without using a trial balance, and that they are prepared manually. I am frankly fascinated. How does one prepare financial statements without having a
That's-
trial balance?
That statement is not right.
Okay.
Miswording. Yeah. Only thing I had to do some manual calculations for the benefits payments.
Okay. And I
They
was,
do it without a trial balance? No, I'm not being critical. No, it's,
There is a trial balance, but it, as was mentioned.
it is and it isn't.
There's adjustments
Okay.
done in Excel to get from what's in the system to what's in the financial statement.
Okay.
we do that too.
But it's different.
Okay.
Do the adjustments get booked back into the general ledger?
I don't believe the manual adjustments ever go back into the general ledger. It continues to be manual. You can correct me if I'm wrong. It's manual each year, you need to do that.
No, but this go back to general ledger. First we had to post the trial balance, then only a pick in the financial.
you do ultimately put those into your system, and they would be on a subsequent adjusted trial balance?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Thank you. So it just sounds like that comment may have needed a little more discussion between
Yes,
the
yeah.
auditors and the system. I'm also curious on the second comment where you talk about the required affidavits for those people who may have passed, and your suggestion that they regularly ask. I'm curious why that would be considered a better test than using the Social Security records. It's actually, that would seem to me to be a more accurate source of information about deaths of pensioners. Unless I'm misreading the comment.
I believe the comment is how often. So,
Yeah, I mean, you say it should be done more often, but your observation is that they are using the decedents from the Social Security Administration postings, which to me would seem like a more accurate source than self-declaration on affidavits, right?
yes. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Oh, no one else, they didn't send the letter and everyone else does?
Right,
Okay, so it was a common practice for the other systems to be sending the letters for the affidavits, and this was the only system.
But actually, wouldn't the best practice be to use the Social Security Administration records? Wouldn't that be a better practice than the affidavits? Wouldn't that be a better test of who's alive and who's passed?
The problem comes up is that the death match is usually done once a year. But if people don't report that somebody died to Social Security,
So in addition,
this would be an additional step to the death match. There are times where people didn't report that somebody
Yeah.
passed away. for
it's
a couple
interesting.
of years.
I think that the system for Social Security has gotten better because I know often now, within a number of days, I think when department issues a
All right.
death certificate.
I'm sorry. So, in addition, the Social Security number in the system is the retirees, and in many cases, it's a beneficiary that does
see.
not match
I
the same
see.
Social Security number in the data.
Okay, it would have been useful if you put that in here, because right now it kind of sounded to me like you were saying, right, this is a better test, and to me
Yeah.
that sounded like the better test. Thank you.
It's another security net.
Yep.
On the
Or
management,
perhaps, maybe we should recommend that the beneficiary Social Security numbers be kept on file, so that they could be bumped up against the Social Security Administration, either in addition to or where the affidavits are not available.
on the management letter, the last comment, 8, penetration testing, that would be if someone is hacking, if they're being hacked?
Well, okay, so that's a standard best practice.
Yeah.
That should be happening on an ongoing basis. There
You
are
would
two-
think you would recommend that it be done for all the systems?
Absolutely. Now, just to draw the distinction, there's an external penetration testing to test for somebody hacking from outside. There's also internal penetration testing, which can be more critical because everybody inside's already got the keys.
Yeah.
So.
Sure, no, that's a very
So,
good
yeah,
point.
and these days, to Mr. Khan's point, people are getting way more creative in terms of hacking and phishing and stealing identities and getting emails from people you think you know and you don't.
Yeah, no, phishing's a problem.
Yeah.
No, it's, fire doesn't even do this, so at least police has done it a couple of times.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's just because they're getting better at this, the hackers,
has been
we need to
5
do this
years.
more often.
Yeah.
And there's ethical hacking from internal, so IT would set up a procedure to test the
No,
employees.
it makes good sense.
To make sure that they are adhering to policies and procedures.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Under Section 5 of the management letter, in the management's response, It says, today, unit supervisors send email requests to Roger Stern, my project manager, to modify COPS data due to data errors. Going forward, Roger will also send the request to me, and I will maintain a log of changes. Who's me?
I believe that's the Director of IT.
That's the Director of IT.
Comment 5, Mr. Khan?
Yes, sir. Comment 5. So, and who's the Director of IT?
His name is William Dorney.
William Donnie. And does Mr. Donnie also have the responsibilities for when incidents happen? Is that the individual who's responsible for evaluating those incidents?
I believe he brings them to the attention of the Chief of Staff and the Head of Management Analysis and Planning, and then they will then converse with the Executive Director.
Okay. Well, I would just make sure we have the individual who's responsible's name in here,
Right.
So that we know who's responsible.
Okay.
Oh, I did have a question with regard to this, the VTech system that you guys examined. Is it VITech or VTech?
White.
VITech.
Yeah.
You've got a sense of the 5 systems and the software and the programs that they were using. Did you have a sense of which systems had greater vulnerabilities or issues, or whether their current programs were in place? It seems like everybody's modernizing, but it's going to take a number of years before that modernization happens, 3 to 5 years in some of these instances. So what were your general observations?
Well, the general observations is that based on the age of software applications, if we call something off the shelf, which there really is no such thing anymore because the systems have become larger and very configurable. So there is a general technology platform, to your point earlier, Mr. Larson.
Yeah, that's Mr. Larson's point.
Right. So there are some general technology framework that would cover all systems. But if you take the older BERS system and maybe the older NYSER system, you may be lacking some of the basic controls inside of that database. Externally in the network environment, though, you can add those best practices and add those protections. I think the bigger issue is access to the system and how we move that data between systems and between buildings and things like that. So a lot of that's very generic. So even though I may have an older application, I can apply it. But based on the data, and I don't want to get too technical, but based on the underlying database, that can get hacked also. So you have to watch it from the front door and from the back door. We always ask those questions because internally they can get in through the back door, or if somebody leaves the door open, they can get in from the back door as well. So often people are just watching the front door. Did that answer your question?
Partially, but I'll follow up with you later, actually.
Sure, absolutely.
If I can just go back to the previous
Could you
comment.
speak up?
If I can just go back to the previous comment on the management's response to finding 6, I actually would be more comfortable without individual names being put in the response, but rather with titles of responsibility being put
Mr.
into
Stein.
management's
I
response.
thought about that.
I think that's more appropriate.
I agree. That's fine. That's fine. I mean, because people change, right? And so it should go to the title.
Yeah. Sure. But basically, I think you make an interesting point. There's really nothing, there's no system that you could take off the shelf and use for every retirement system.
Well, I'm not saying that specifically. They do have I think what we saw, to your point, I think, different histories of the archival information that was in a particular system. Anytime you upgrade a system as large as the pension system, leaving the accounting system out of it, because that's mostly a general ledger, I have to decide what my data and digital document destruction policy is, and how long I keep those backups, and how long I keep the systems, and how am I going to, and what data am I going to move forward to, to keep the continuity of the system in place.
I guess as auditors, you'd have to deal with that.
Correct.
Just live with it.
But I just want to commend you. I think in the previous year's audit reports, there wasn't as thorough of an analysis of this component.
No.
And I think it is
They're
really
very good
remarkable.
statements. I really mean it.
I personally appreciate the fact that you guys are doing this because these will be the future
Very
challenges.
fine statements.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so
and,
much.
Thank you for your help. The last system is the fire system. Last year, they were terrible. Hope it's different this year. Good morning. Could you be kind enough to introduce yourselves?
Albert Connolly, I'm the director of the pension fund.
Are you a civilian or a...
Civilian.
Civilian, okay.
Maureen Dale, Chief Accountant. Agnes Chan, Deputy Chief Accountant.
And where are you located, sir? And
We are actually, well, right now, we're still part of the fire department. But recent legislation was just passed in September, September, that we are now going to become corporately funded, just
Gonna-
like the fire pension system will become corporately funded like all the other systems.
Uh-huh.
And we actually have an executive director.
Pardon me?
The expenses to run the pension plan will actually come from the QPP.
Uh-huh.
And the new executive director, which is appointed through the law by the fire commissioner, has become a uniform member, Steve Cassidy. Stephen Cassidy is the new executive director.
As a uniform man?
Uniform member.
Captain?
No, he's a firefighter.
Just a firefighter? Okay. I remember it was different at one time. Okay.
Will he be on leave the way that the police departments?
It's the exact law that the police department
Got
passed.
it. Thank you.
So fire and police will be the same way, in that the corpus of the fund will pay the expenses of the administration.
Well, right now, we're in a temporary mode.
No, it's all right.
What it is he was appointed November 1st, so I think after July 1st, they still haven't come up with a budget yet, so that's what they're in the middle of talks with. I think as of July 1st of 17, it's going to become where we'll have a set budget, and we're going to have to hire a lot of people.
And where would you be located?
That's a question we ask every day.
Sorry.
And I get asked that question by all of my employees every day. But as of
Right now, you're in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn,
Where the
yes.
fire department, you're in the fire department headquarters.
Yes.
But you're eventually going to move out.
Yes.
And where is the department in Metrotech?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And people are coming to look at our offices every day. Probably someone measuring my office as I speak.
They might move in by the time you get
Well, that's what it is. When we got the, like, we've always thought of ourselves, because we don't put out fires, that we were like the stepchildren of the fire department. But now we feel like, what do they call it, foster child, and our 18th birthday is coming.
Same way.
I started in the
That's
fire
where when he's going.
I started in the fire department years ago as a civilian, and I remember the uniformed people, when they came in to discuss their pension benefits, used to like to meet with someone who was a uniformed force member. It wasn't necessary, but, tradition, and forgetting everything else, the job is a very dangerous one, as we know what recently happened. I remember at that time they said the more dangerous job than that was coal mining. We have a president that wants to open the mines. What are you going to do with him? So, do you have a statement, ma'am, on the MD&A?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Our combined net position held in trust for benefits increased by 0.5% to $11.7 billion. So we expect to grow mainly through increases in net investment income. However, they were low in fiscal 16, and across the funds there was a net depreciation in the fair value of the investment portfolios. We reported net investment income of $203 million, which was 33% less than the previous period. Benefit payments and withdrawals reported were over $1.3 billion, or 11% greater than fiscal 15. This was due mainly through the settlement of contracts by the firefighters union, which enabled us to finalize over 700 retirees who are receiving 90% of their benefits. We also added over 400 new retirees to the rolls. Our member contributions also increased, I guess something to do with the settlement of contracts also. And our employer contributions went up by 6%. Overall, the combined contributions and the net investment income allowed us to cover our benefit payments. And we
I used to
ended
look
up
at that
with a little
always in all the
something.
funds years ago. In terms of the cash flow,
Okay,
you could do it. Very good.
thank you.
You had no skim?
Not this year, no.
Not this year. You had one last year.
Yes, we did.
Very good. Okay. So you determined, I'm sorry, your office determined that there was a potential skim of $52 million, I think, but it was not required because there were enough assets and the variable supplement funds to pay the benefits. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm going a lot on memory.
The skim is transferred
At
regardless
page
of,
10,
the skim is transferred regardless of whether there's enough assets to pay the benefits for the VSF. It's an independent calculation.
well,
If there's a transfer, there's two types of transfer. One is because the equity returns exceed the hypothetical interest rate. Another
Okay.
type of transfer is if the fund, the VSF fund, does not have enough assets to pay out the benefits.
okay. On page 10, it says transferable earnings due from qualified pension plan to variable supplement funds, 52 million, and then there's an elimination. So they didn't need it.
Go up on top and you'll see.
I'm sorry?
If you go up on top, it's the asset.
I'm sorry. I see it. Okay. Okay. I see it. So you did transfer $52 million.
Well, this is the balance sheet.
I'm sorry?
It's in 2000.
That's 15, and that's only the balance sheet.
What?
That's only the balance sheet.
All right, so let's look at the income statement. I don't see the transfer, do you? So they had a transfer at page 12. That's what I thought.
The actual cash probably happened
Yeah.
in 16.
What?
The actual cash probably transferred in 16 after the year ended.
Okay.
While we're looking at this statement, I'll just make
I'm sorry?
while we're looking at this statement, I'll just make a minor observation, which is, it looks like you could probably fit a slightly larger font and a little less blank space on this page, which would surely make it easier for old folks like me to read.
Yes, I agree with you.
Your role.
I'm in full agreement. I know.
I don't have
I
any
asked
other
the
questions on the
question again.
statements.
I'm really confused. Did you have to transfer the money in 16 for the fire fund or not?
For 2000, when you say have to, you
No,
know,
I'm
there's-
sorry, under the regulations or whatever you want to call it.
So
I'm
the-
looking at page 12. You did transfer some funds?
Yes, so there was a skim.
Okay, thank you. All right.
There was also one in 16.
Yeah, no, well, that was the one in 15 and the one in 16, all right. Okay. The hypothetical interest rate is still 6%? What is it?
Hypothetical interest rate is derived off of the treasury rates. It's an average of the 10-year It's a 10-year average of the Treasury rates, and we take 110% of that.
Of the long-term Treasury rates, or
10 years.
10? What would you say it would be now? Do you recall, ma'am?
It was in the 2 or 3, low 2%.
2%?
Yeah.
The previous head of the Federal Reserve Bank threw the old people under the bus, and he threw us under the bus too, I guess, when he kept those rates so low to try to keep the market high. All right. Politics enters into everything. Thank you for the clarification. I do appreciate it. It's been so long, I mean, that I was close to this. And again, the Bureau of Asset Management supervises the investments for the fire fund, you know, that the trustees agree to. Is that it? Pretty much like all the other funds, or some variation?
Same of all funds. Same
Pardon
thing.
me?
Same thing for all funds.
The same, okay. I don't know. Michelle, did you have any questions?
Not on the statements.
Okay, let's go to the management letter. The statements are excellent, by the way.
Thank you.
Really, they were, years ago, they were horrible. It's such a difference.
Okay.
Go ahead, Michelle.
On the first comment, the I-9 form, what is that?
Well, we don't investigate our members. We have, personnel has a candidate investigation unit, and when you get hired, you have to become a member of the fund. So I guess the I-9 is once they're approved through investigation that they can be hired.
Okay.
Then it's signed off, I guess, by one of the candidate investigate, the guest. So it really wasn't it was through them.
Okay. Okay. And in the second.
So I'm just going to say, not comment, addition to the examination that the prospective candidate passes, they still have to go through this investigation?
Yes.
Okay.
In your response about participant contributions, what proportion of members still have age-based contributions?
All the members that are appointed or have pension membership prior to July 1st of 2009.
Got it. So that's probably a sizable share.
Well, they've already calculated when they got hired.
Right.
Like we're hiring a new class now. We probably have some PD transfers. So those PD transfers.
They always had them.
We'll start off as a Tier 3 member, then when they contribute their time,
Got it.
we'll get the rate from.
It was true years ago that there were always police members who would transfer into the fire department by taking the exam. Not the other way, but this way.
Yes.
With regard to the data backup technology, observation 9, does this mean that you are currently using tape backups for your own purposes?
Well, it's not really a pension fund issue. It's the fire department has an IT section.
I guess that's the question. Is the fire department using?
I think for
Tape
some things they
backup?
are, tape backup.
Okay.
Can make a
That's-
comment? Okay. So often the word used just for educational purposes, the word tapes are used generically for now hard drives as well as the older tape. No, but they are using the older tapes. I'm just clarifying. Just clarifying so that
Oh, man.
just
You
education.
almost
So
had me.
if you hear the term, people use that somewhat loosely, and they say tapes because it's, that's the way it used to be.
But in this case, the shock is
Magnetic
warranted.
tapes are highly volatile. They
systems
fail.
better.
The heads on the drives fail. I won't blah, blah, blah. And they're stored for a long period of time, 7 years plus, or whatever the compliance requirements are. By that time, the technology doesn't exist, and you have to pay a fortune to pay somebody like Kroll or whatever to pull the data off. So you have to keep changing the technology to move forward. But, again, it ties back to the data destruction policies as well, to how long you keep things.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what else the fire department keeps on tape backup.
That's a problem. You have mixed information, whether it be legal, financial, compliance, all on one tape. So how do you break that out? So,
Thank you for
Yep.
clarifying. One more, I'm sorry, the last one, the PPMS data entry. Management's response is disagree because the automation is not possible as PPMS is managed by presumably FISA. Has there been discussion with FISA about how to do this?
We've asked them every year, basically, because it's a lot of manual work, and it's just not compatible with, I think they basically just said they're not going to do it.
That's the last comment? Comment 13. What? Yeah.
We designed that system, PPMS, in 2005, and since myself and Mary Bassel, the former director, both had backgrounds with the payroll management system, because I got hired to help implement that at Fire for Payroll.
Right.
We tried to push for it, but there was nobody wanted to listen.
Thank you.
If there are no more comments, I want to thank you, sir, for everything. You don't know where you're going to be, though. That's the thing. It's tough on the staff. I want to thank the auditors.
Thank you as well. I just wanted to make a suggestion based on Mr. Khan's and Mr. Larson's IT concerns, and to be able to share the best practices, because it sounds like you haven't gotten this out of the systems in a number of years, but maybe collaborate with the IT directors of the individual systems to bring forth these letters, and we would be more than happy to participate in those meetings to help bring some understanding and detail to the comments. So you can then share those better practices from system to system.
You know what might be helpful for us is if you were to prepare just a little summary chart.
A metrics.
Yeah,
on
just-
where, yep.
Right,
that's
just so we
exactly
can
what I
see
s-
where we have similar problems, and we could identify both who needs remediation and who's doing
Without
it,
a doubt.
at least up
Yep.
to snuff. So,
That's exactly what I envision.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, I want to thank the Office of the Actuary for coming. Thank you so much, and the people from the Bureau of Asset Management. Thank you so much for your comments. But that 10-year treasury, that's so low. There's got to be skims. Okay.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, I'm sorry it took so long, but good to see you again. Where's my eyeglass?